So, we have to get through the technical stuff first. So welcome to Yin Yoga at Nivata. I appreciate you being here today. And today is going to be more of a combination between yin and restorative. So we're going to use our props and feel really supported and nourished. And then I just have one question. Lisa, are you working at 11? If you just give me a thumbs up or thumbs down, so I know whether to go an hour. I can't hear you.
Oh.
So, okay. All right. So we're just going to get started on sitting cross-legged with a short meditation. If you like your hips elevated in order to tip your pelvis forward a little bit so it's not so much strain on your back, I would invite you to do that and cross your legs. And let's take 3 really deep breaths together. So let's breathe in through our nose, deep, deep breath. And exhale through our mouths. And you can kind of make a sound and really let go of anything that's tight or holding. We're going to take a second deep breath. Out through our mouths. And then the third breath, I want it to be the biggest breath you're going to take today. So really inhale and expand your belly. Let's take a deep breath and hold it for just a second. And then just that exhale out. See if you can tell if your shoulders lowered a little bit. And then I would invite you to soften your eyes or perhaps close your eyes. And I want you to imagine a mountain. It can be a snow-capped mountain. It could be a lush rolling green mountain. Just picture a mountain that brings some peace in your mind. Try to visualize what kind of trees it has, what kind of vegetation it might have. Does it have woodland creatures or exotic creatures? And I want you to think about where your location is and whether it's a cold place or a windy place or a warm place. And try to imagine what that temperature might feel like on your skin. Is your mountain in daylight, or can you see a starry night sky? Really try to feel into your mountain and imagine that you are on the mountain and you can feel it on your skin. You can feel the ground underneath your feet. You can feel the breeze, or maybe the air is really still and humid. And now imagine that you are the mountain. Think of the base of your mountain, grounded into the earth, strong, solid, bound to the earth. And then you can picture, if you will, the top of your head being the peak of your mountain. And think about how different the base of your mountain feels from the peak of your mountain. Is the temperature different? Do you see clouds swirling above your head in your peak? Does that feel different than the weight of the base and the legs on the earth? And think about all of the things that a mountain goes through, all the seasons, all the temperature changes, falling leaves, snow, warmth, and rebirth. And imagine in your own life how that metaphor mirrors what we all go through. But remember, if you will, that mountains are resilient and strong. They weather all kinds of things. They nourish all the things around them and on them. They bring stability. They bring inspiration. And they're infinitely a part of the landscape. Let's take 4 or 5 more nourishing, deep breaths into our mountain and nourish from the inside. You could even imagine that your breaths are the wind through the trees. And on our last breath, can slowly open your eyes and take in all that's around you. And I would ask you to just see if you feel a more grounded sense in your body and how that may have changed through the meditation. Okay, so the first pose we're going to do is a supported child's pose. And so what I would invite you to do is to come onto all fours on your mat and bring your bolster. And if you widen your knees a little bit toward the end of the sides of the mat, and then come down onto your heels. And then you want to put the edge of the bolster kind of in between your knees, maybe a little deeper, because what you're going to look for is for your torso to come down onto the bolster. And your arms can rest either on the side of the bolster, or perhaps you want to kind of hug the bolster. And I would encourage you to turn your head to one side. And you can soften your eyes or close them. You don't want to feel any stress on your knees. If your knees are feeling tight or stressed at all, you could perhaps move them a little further apart And if your toes could touch, that just offers a little bit more support. We're just going to stay here for a few moments. And if you take some deep breaths, you actually can get a little front body massage as your belly pushes against the bolster. See if you're holding any muscles. You could ask them to let go. Just melt down onto the bolster. Relax your arms. Take a few deep breaths. And with your exhale, see if you can let go of anything that might be tight or holding. If you feel like your neck is getting a little pinchy, you could always turn your head to the other side. See if you, when you exhale, if you can continue to just melt into the bolster. Let's take 5 more breaths. Well, let's place our hands about halfway down the bolster. Gently push ourselves up. And then I would invite you to push your bolster closer to the top of the mat. We're going to stay on our bellies. We're going to do one of my favorite poses. And what I would invite you to do is to put the hip creases right at the base of the bolster so that your torso is supported, but your legs right after the hip, your pubic bone is off the bolster. You're going to just straighten your legs tuck your toes under and just kind of get a nice stretch for your legs. See if you can keep your spine straight, aligned from your heels all the way through the crown of your head. Your arms can be down at their sides. And just take a nice little stretch here, pushing into your heels. And then go ahead and relax your legs down. Maybe your feet are flat on your mat. And then I would invite you to bend. I'm going to do it on my left side just so you can see. But bend it doesn't matter which leg, but your right or your left leg. And you want it to come straight out of the hip. So again, your hip is supported by the bolster. And I would invite you to keep your foot turned out. And this really gets into the hip and helps that joint hydrate, but you're still supported. And so then you can go ahead and rest your head on the bolster. If your head's a little off the bolster, you could use a blanket or a block if that feels good, to just rest your head down. And your arms can be either in a T out from both of your shoulders, kind of mirroring that hip joint, or you could just have them in whatever is most comfortable. If this is too much pressure on your knee, you could put a blanket or something underneath your knee to give it a little comfort. And if this is too much, you can just put your bended leg down onto the mat, or even keep it out straight with your foot, or straight behind you with your foot flat on the mat itself. It's the angle that the hip is coming from the hip joint or the bolster is going to offer the joint that hydration. See if you can relax the glutes. Is there anywhere that's you're feeling tension? See if you can take a few breaths, and on the exhale, push air or breath into that area. And the way we do that is to just think about the area that's feeling tense, or the muscle that's feeling tense. And when you take your breath, the attention of the mind will take the breath or the oxygen into that particular spot in your body. That focus on the area is what brings release. So if you're feeling pretty complete on that side, I would invite you to slowly straighten the leg out behind you, resting the knee and the top of the foot on the mat.
You could, again, tuck your toes under on your right leg, just give it a little stretch, or perhaps just rock your foot back and forth just to move energy up and down the leg. And then just rest it next to the other leg behind you on the earth. Let it feel stretched and weighted. And then let's do the same with our left leg, or whichever leg you were bending. Again, you want to try to align the thigh and the knee with the hip joint, or the leg coming out from the hip. And again, our bodies are not symmetrical, so it may be more intense on one side or the other. You may be able to get your leg more or your knee more aligned with the hip on one side than the other. But that's okay. Everyone's body is different, and it's important that you recognize that sometimes you need to pay attention and allow the body to do what feels good. The beauty of yin is that you want your body to go to the edge of sensation, but there should never be any pain or maybe slight discomfort, but it shouldn't be uncomfortable to hold a pose. And again, sides of our body are different. So again, I invite you to turn your foot out if that's accessible for you. Try to align the knee and the heel of your foot if that's possible for you. And then I would encourage you to just turn your head to the other side so that your neck is relaxed and even on both sides. See if you can, again, release that glute, those glute muscles that want to take all of the pressure. And if this is hard on your knee, you can straighten the leg more or put something soft underneath your knee to just help it feel more comforted. See if you can relax the muscles in your shoulder. Bring them down from your ears. Could you relax the jaw muscle? The muscles behind the eyes, the brow. Let's take 5 more deep breaths on this side. See if you can, when you inhale, push your belly and your front side body into the bolster. And when you get to your last breath, maybe take a deep inhale and really sigh out the exhale, pulling the navel to the spine. And then let's take your leg to meet the other straight out behind you so that your spine is once again aligned. If you have an extra block or blanket that you put on the to support your head, let's remove that now. Maybe try to point the crown of the head so that the spine is shooting out like an arrow. Your feet are flat on the mat behind you. Your knees are supported by the mat. Maybe just tap out the legs a little bit. Take advantage of that juicy energy that you just created and the hydration in the hip joints. And then I would invite you to push up to a tabletop position. You could maybe even sit back on your hips a little bit, stretch your arms and your length of your spine out a little bit. And then I would invite you to, just gonna turn around. I would invite you to, we're gonna do crocodile pose, which we're gonna stay on our belly a little while longer. So I'd invite you to lower your body down. You can put your arms out in front of you, stack your hands together, and just put your brow down onto your backs of your hands. Maybe just swish your hips a little bit, again, inviting in that fascia hydration that we just created. Maybe it will feel good to bend one knee and then the other, stretching the quadriceps a little. Or you could, if it feels good for you, bring the heels to the sky and windshield wiper your legs a little bit. And then let's tee our right arm out from our shoulder and come up on our fingertips. And then just raise the shoulder a little bit and sink it down into the mat. And maybe hold it there if you feel that shoulder stretch, or perhaps bring it back and down again, pointing the interior of the shoulder down onto the mat. Or if that isn't serving you today, perhaps just rest your arm, your right arm out in a T shape and allow the shoulder to just try to come toward the mat and get a little bit of rotation in that shoulder. Let's take, wherever you are, let's take 2 more breaths. If you roll the shoulder back, can you feel that in your scapula, underneath your shoulder blade? Let's bring the right arm back in and extend the left arm out. Come up on your fingertips and roll the shoulder in and roll it back. Roll it forward and roll it back. And again, if that doesn't feel good to you, then you could just extend your left arm and be able to feel gravity pulling that shoulder down into the earth.
Let's do 2 more. Okay. And then from here, let's come up to a Sphinx pose. So I would invite you to take your hands out in front of you, parallel to one another. Try to keep the elbows aligned with the shoulders underneath you. If this is a little too strenuous, you could take a blanket and just tuck it underneath the ribs. That just offers your front side just a little more support. You want to see if you can roll your shoulders back. And then what I would invite you to do is, oftentimes in this pose, our glutes really try to take over and support the low back. But if we allow the glutes to just relax, maybe take the feet out hips width apart, or even a little wider if that's more comfortable for you. But if we allow the glutes to let go, how does that feel in the lower back? Do you feel a lot of pressure, or perhaps just a little bit of a squeeze? One of my favorite things about Sphinx pose is that in the squeezing of the low back, you're actually squeezing the kidneys and some of the organs, and that releases those toxins in our body, creates kind of a cleansing. And if your head would like support, you could put a block under your forehead, or I would invite you to see if you could point the crown, tip your chin down to your chest a little, and point your crown of your head toward the front of the room, and see what that feels like for your spine. Go ahead and maybe tip it down further. See if that feels like a good stretch. Can you roll your shoulders away from your ears a little bit more? And what if you tipped your head very slowly so that your face is shining in front of you? Just maybe very slowly rock the neck down. And very slowly come up and shine your face up, looking toward the ceiling. And then maybe coming back to a neutral position, maybe looking right and left, back and forth. Let's take 2 more deep breaths here. Maybe bring your head back to a neutral position. And let's push our hands and knees back up to a table position, any way you need to just feel comfortable. Any intuitive movement that your body's asking for. You can remove any props that you have in front of you, wherever you've used. And then let's come up to a tabletop position. Hands underneath the shoulder blades, fingers spread wide. Maybe the eyes of your elbows pointing in toward each other. And then you want your knees underneath your hips. Just kind of rock back and forth a little bit in your hips and see if you can find that really strong, stable position. Press into the earth in your hands and the widespread fingers. See if you can feel the fingers get wider if you push into the knuckles. And rotate the arms a little bit so that your elbows are pointed in. And then before we go into a few cat-cows, let's just see that if we push the earth away from our hands, if we could lower our shoulders, it's a really small movement, and then round just the shoulders, and then dip the shoulders down a little bit. See if in the upper back, if you could just isolate those upper back, almost like a little tiny 3-inch push-up. Okay, so now let's go into a few cat-cows. So what we're gonna do is you're gonna take a deep breath in and arch your back, look up, push the chest and the heart forward. And then in your exhale, you just slowly tuck your chin and arch your back just like a cat. And again, maybe push into the earth so that your upper back gets a nice stretch as well. And when you exhale, if you think about your belly button pushing into your spine and really expelling all of the air out. And then let's take another deep inhale, heart comes forward, head looks up, belly drops down. And then exhale, drop the chin, around the back, push out all the air. Do one more time really slowly. Inhale, drop the belly. Head comes forward, look up, and then exhale, round. And then you can do that at your own pace a couple of more times, or perhaps it feels good to wag your tail, wiggle your hips a little bit, maybe look back, look to your right side hip and then your left side hip. Give your side body a little bit of a stretch. Or just in your own pace or your own movement, take a few more cat-cows and really stretch out the spine. From here, we're going to go to a seated position. So you could just come down on one hip or the other. Bring your bended legs out in front of you, feet on the earth. Give yourself a little hug. And then let's put our right leg out in the other right leg out off to the side, coming out of your right hip. And maybe your left leg, your foot could come to your calf. And you want to try to make sure that your toes and your knees are pointed toward the sky. If you have a tendency to roll out or roll in, you want to just try to be conscious that you might have to engage your foot a little bit, maybe flex it back. But you want a nice long leg where the hip and the knee and the foot or toes are all aligned. And then let's take a big stretch over our heads. Stretch the arms up. Keep the shoulders down and back. Let's move your torso, bend your torso over to the right, and then come stretch over the right leg. And it doesn't need to be a big bend or a big stretch. It could just be a smaller movement. As long as your leg, your knee again, and your foot can stay pointed up, or perhaps you could bend your belly and touch your ankle or your shin or your toes. And then just see if you can relax your head, maybe tuck the chin. This should feel like a stretch in the back of your leg, but it shouldn't be a strain. It should just be a stretch. And I would say that for your low back as well. You want to be able to feel the sensation in your low back, but there shouldn't be any pulling. It shouldn't be hard to do. It should just be to the edge of your sensation. And if you exhale deeply, can you sink into the pose a little bit more? You feel the muscles in your upper back, shoulders, arms relax a little bit more and sink more deeply into the stretch. With each exhale of letting go, can you dispel the things in your body that are holding or aren't serving you today? Let's take 3 more deep breaths here. And then slowly place your hands on the earth and push yourself back up. Turn your torso center again. Try to see if you can reach through your crown, straighten your back. Maybe you need to lean back just a little bit. Or maybe it would be helpful to sit on a blanket and just elevate your hips up a little so that your pelvis could be tipping forward. And then we are going to switch legs. So your left leg will be out aligned with the hip joint. Your knees up to the knee up to the sky. Toes up to the sky. Let's just sit here a moment with our torso in neutral facing forward. Find where the right knee wants to bend, where the foot wants to rest. Maybe it's not all the way to the thigh, maybe it's a little further out. Maybe it feels good to flex your toes back toward your right knee. And then let's just relax the right leg. We're going to take a deep breath bring our hands up over our head, lower the shoulders down and back.
Move the torso to the left and then reach down over that leg. Again, just to the point of sensation. There shouldn't feel any strain. Maybe the hands come to the knee or the shin, maybe to the ankle, maybe to the toes. With each inhale and exhale, could you sink down into the stretch a little bit more? Could you relax your jaw? Relax your brow. Relax your shoulders. Just take 3 more breaths here. Your own natural breath. You can sink down in just a little bit deeper, a little bit deeper. And then on your last breath, deep inhale. And on the exhale, walk your torso slowly back up. And maybe bring it around to neutral and to center. Let's take another big stretch. Bring your hands over your head. Fingertips spread and wide, reaching up to the sky. Tuck the chin just a little bit so the crown can follow that energy up, up, up. And then just slowly float your arms down so that your fingertips can touch the earth. Let's bring our feet straight out in front of us, our legs straight out in front of us, your toes pointing up. And let's just maybe tap out our legs a little bit. Maybe it feels good to bring them to your knees, put your weight back, swing them back and forth a little bit. And then straighten them. Tap them out again. Get all of that good prana flowing throughout your legs. Let's give them a little hug again and thank them for the support that they give us every day. Strength. And then I would invite you to, while we're still in this seated position, let's take the palms of our feet and put them together, knees out wide. You can have your feet close in if that feels good, or they could be out. That provides less pressure on the knees.
But just find a position that, or a space that feels good to you. Again, maybe you have a blanket underneath your hips. Maybe you want to bring your blocks in and you can support the knees if that feels like too much strain. We'll just go into a little butterfly position. And then let's straighten our backs, take a deep breath, crown to the sky. And then just slowly see from the hips if you can bend forward over your feet. It doesn't have to be a very big bend. It can just be what feels good and nourishing to you. Maybe your elbows, push your knees out just a little bit more and you can feel that stretch in your inner thigh. Maybe you could stretch your arms out in front of you, palms to the earth. See what that feels like in your shoulder, or if that is a bigger stretch in your inner thigh. And if it's too much, you could walk your hands back a little bit. Maybe you could tuck the chin and let the neck relax down. Feel the head heavy toward the ground. A really good grounding exercise, especially in butterfly, is you put your palms of your hands on the palms of your feet. It pulls all the energy down into the base of your feet. You can feel the heat from the hands. You can feel maybe the energy exchange between the hands and the feet. This is also a really good exercise before you go to bed to just pull all the energy down from your head down into your root chakra, into your feet, and allow all the strength of your legs and your feet to take all of that sometimes swirling head energy and allow the earth to take it. And with each breath, could you sink into the pose just a little bit more? Could you relax any muscles that are perhaps feel like they're protecting or are tense? Could you ask them to just let go and allow your lower half of your body to really just absorb that and bring it into the ground beneath you? This again is where your mountain energy, base of your mountain, can support anything that goes on inside, outside the framework of your mountain. Let's take 3 more breaths here. And then slowly tuck the chin to the chest. Place your hands, if they're not already, on the earth, and just slowly walk yourself back up, your torso straight. And then the chin is the last thing to come up. And let's straighten out our legs in front of us again. Move them how that feels good to you. Maybe tap them up and down. Maybe physically tap them. stimulate all of that prana and energy and relaxation that we just created, all the hydration in the joints that we created. Let's get that moving throughout. Let's take a deep breath here and we'll reach our hands up above our heads again. Shoulders down the back, fingers stretched wide and reaching toward the heavens. And then let's exhale, slowly bring our arms down and reach our fingertips to the earth. Let's just stay here for just another breath. Let's take a deep breath in together and an audible sigh on the exhale. Okay, now we are going to do some blanket folding. So if you want to bring your blocks up to the top of your mat and have them ready for you. And then we're going to take our blanket and we're going to bring it out to kind of a half fold. And then what I invite you to do is from a long ways, fold it in thirds. So it doesn't have to be perfect. And if you have the salvaged edge like I do here, you want that to be on your mat so that your upper back has a nice, soft, wide surface area to rest on. And then what I would invite you to do is we're going to roll onto our backs, and you want the blanket to come just above where you're right about where your bra line is. And you want the tops of your shoulders to be resting on the mat. So what we're going to do is when you roll down, your upper back, and again, bra line is supported, but your head and your shoulders, we're going to put our arms into a T, are actually resting on the mat. So this is a little bit of a back bend. It's called fish pose. And you can bend your knees if that feels better for you, or you can straighten out the legs. And if this hurts your neck at all, or perhaps has any pinching, I would invite you to adjust where the blanket is behind your back, and maybe just tuck your chin just a little bit so that your neck is supported. And then you can have your palms facing up or facing down, sinking into the earth, or perhaps you have one palm up and one palm down. And you really want to feel this small arch in your lower back. Your shoulders are supported onto the mat, and it's just creating a little arc. Feel the muscles and the weight sink into your mat below you, into the earth below you. See if you can surrender to that weight. If you're still feeling some pressure on your low back, that's not pleasant. Could reach your heels toward the edges of the mat a little bit more, widen your hips. And then I invite you to take a really deep breath, expand your belly, bring the air from the base of your diaphragm all the way up, rising into your chest. Hold it for just a moment. And then in your exhale, Maybe make a whoosh. And see if you can settle more into the weight of the body on the earth. Again, at any time, if you feel like this is too much on your neck, you can tuck your chin. Or maybe you could tip your head back so the crown of your head is pointed toward the earth. Just a long front body neck stretch. And perhaps if that feels good, you could move your head back and forth between a tucked chin and a heart opener. Is there anywhere in your body that could be more supported by the earth? And you wiggle your toes, see if you can tense and then relax your legs again. See if you can sink them down into the earth. Let's take 5 more breaths here at your own pace. Oh, sorry. On your 5th breath, you roll slowly onto whatever side feels better for you into a seed shape. Maybe you rest your head on your arm. Your knees can be bent. Just give yourself a moment here. Before you use your other hand to push yourself up slowly into a seated position again. And then we're gonna build a little bit. So I'm gonna move your blanket off your mat. Oops, sorry, technical issues. Let's take our blocks to our mat. You're gonna, on the highest setting, you're gonna set that at the top of your mat. And then you're gonna take your second block and put it, this is the flat setting. You're gonna tip it up like this, and maybe 4 inches, 5 inches in between the two. And then we're gonna take our bolster, we're gonna make a ramp, just like that. There's a little bit of architecture today in class. And then what I invite you to do is to take your blanket and unroll it to almost its widest folded half. And on the long side, you're just gonna roll it into a noodle. Again, it doesn't have to be perfect, but what you're trying to do is to create your blanket on a roll on the longest edge. Okay. Then what I invite you to do is to sit with your back toward your ramp. You might want to have about a fist distance between your tailbone and the ramp. And then we're going to put our palms of our feet together again in butterfly like we had before out in front of us. And then I invite you to take your blanket roll and set it on the tops of your ankle. And then take the two ends and you're just gonna fold it underneath your ankles and then pull the two ends up in between. So let me show you. So you're gonna go into butterfly, gonna put the roll on top of your ankles, tuck the ends in between and pull them up so they're nice and snug. Okay? Yep, good. And then slowly and gently roll back onto the ramp you've created. Settle what that feels like. Do you need to make any adjustments? Do you feel that wide opening across the front side of your chest? Can you rest your arms down to your sides, or does it feel good to bring them out a little bit more? Can you gently roll your shoulders down and back a little bit? You have even more opening across your chest. The knees are supported by the blanket. Can you sink down the weight of your body into the bolster and allow your back to feel supported, your chest to be open, your neck to be long. If you tuck your chin just a little bit, you'll get even more length in your neck. And can you just settle here? See if you could settle the mind or visualize something soft and relaxing. Can you relax the muscles of your face? Part your lips just a little so it releases the jaw. Can you feel all the energy that we've created in our practice today? Settling into the spots and crevices in your body that maybe needed more hydration and nourishment. Does the temperature of your body feel more even? Are there any places that still feel tense or tight? I invite you to take a few deep breaths and see if you can direct your prana through your thought and your mind's eye into those spaces that still need a little bit more attention. I invite you to take 3 more breaths here. And if this feels good and nourishing to you and relaxing, then I invite you to stay here for our final pose. Or you can come down slowly by pushing your hands up behind you to push your torso up if you'd like to go to a more traditional Shavasana shape. Or if this feels good, you can stay just right here, whichever you would prefer. If you do choose to come up from this pose, just do it very slowly. You can unbind your legs if that's what you choose. Remove your props and just slowly make your way onto your back. And maybe since you have all the props nearby, perhaps you want to put the blanket under your head as a pillow, or put the bolster underneath your knees for more support. Whatever Shavasana shape, whatever final resting shape you feel would be the most nourishing for you, let's move into that position now. And perhaps it's even a seated position. Maybe it's not even a lying down position. Whatever last shape is going to feel the best in your body. As I go forward, I may stumble, but I stand up more than I fall down. When we spend so much of our time focusing on our missteps, we trip, or when we trip and fall, we seem only to obsess over the 10 seconds we were on the ground, rather than the rest of the day we spent walking perfectly fine. Similarly, in life, we let one heavy moment, month, or year get in the way of our ability to see that we are okay so much more than we are not okay. Falling down does not make us who we are. Standing up does. Rising and continuing to move forward. Now I invite you to start to move your fingers and toes, bring awareness back into the body. Maybe roll your ankles or your wrists. And when you're ready, roll onto your right side slowly, bending your knees. Again, maybe resting your head on your arm. And then when you feel ready, you can push yourself up and find a seated position. Bring your hands to your knees. Let's take a nice deep breath here. Filling the belly and the chest, bringing that breath up through your spine. Then nice deep exhale. Belly into the navel, into the spine. Push all of the air out. And then I invite you to reach your hands up over your head. Roll your shoulders down your back. Maybe find your hands at your heart. Thumbs pushing against your sternum so that your heart lifts up a bit. Let's think of something that we're thankful for today or grateful for today. Let's rub our hands together and create a little heat. Then cross them over our chest, over our heart space. Thank you so much for being here with me today, giving Nivata its purpose, allowing me to bring you through a practice. Hopefully you found nourishing and relaxing. The light in me acknowledges and loves the light in you. Namaste.
Namaste.